The following review is full of graphic violence. Scenes of beheadings and limbs being chopped off make you squirm. Please turn around now. I'm not kidding. This game is violent. Enjoy.
Am I dead?
You are banished from death. A curse binds us together.
Who are you?
I shaped the history of Middle-earth. I crafted the rings of power.
Celebrimbor.
There have been very few games based on movies and book properties that have done their subject matter any justice at all. No, seriously, there are some real stinkers out there. But with Lord of the Rings Shadow of Mordor, they were embarking on a story that hasn't really been told. The story of the creation and loss of the One Ring. The creation of the ring is a story I've been very excited about for a long time. And the only reason I didn't want to see a movie based on that is because I knew that they wouldn't be able to do this epic story justice. I play Shadow of Mordor into a new category of game I like to call the Murder Fantasy Simulator. That is to say that you murder a lot of things, and it's okay, because the things that you murder are ugly monsters with British accents. So they were asking for it, basically.
My babies! You cannot take them! You shall not!
Shadow of Mordor is an open-world game with RPG elements, and the same amazing combat system from the Batman Arkham games. If you're not familiar with the Arkham games, you can go ahead and click on the link here to our YouTube review or the actual written review on the website. The system is basically building a combo meter with strikes and counters until it gets to a certain number to allow you to do special strike moves, like an instant kill or later on in the game an instant drain or brand. On the surface, the system is very straightforward and almost basic. What makes it interesting is that you can gain points via experience throughout the game and put those points into enhancements that allow you to modify the system so that it's easier to pull off combos. For example, at one point in the game, I was able to sink points into the ability to make the strike start at 5 instead of 8, and 2 executions where I would normally be able to do 1 when I get to the limit break. These things may seem small, but they drastically alter how you play and in the end enjoy the combat.
Get out of my argument!
Like Destiny, there isn't much of a story here, but the gameplay is so satisfying that I found myself just wanting to go through the motions because it was fun and enjoyable. So you can gain experience by doing any number of things in the world, but there are also other systems that require other in-game currencies. You can take on the orc war chiefs and captains to gain power, or P, and you can do side missions to gain M, which I can't remember what those things stand for. Let's call the M Mithril, and of course the P power, because, you know, Mithril, Lord of the Rings. Anyways, you can spend P on unlocking tiers to get access to different combat powers or Wraith Ghost Friend powers. Yes, you have a ghost friend throughout this game. You then spend ability points on these powers. The Mithril you spend on more permanent attributes, like overall health and how many arrows you can carry. When I first started, I saw the whole map littered with collectibles and side missions, so that right from the get-go, my ADD just took over and I had to max out my character before even starting the story missions. After 3 story missions, I realized I had only seen half the map. This game is pretty big. Like I said, the story is slim, but what's there is pretty rich in Tolkien lore. It takes place between The Hobbit and the first Lord of the Rings books. You are a ranger named Talion, who witnesses his family get killed, and try to get revenge with the help of your new ghost friend, Celebrimbor. And fans of the Lord of the Rings series know he's the one who happens to be the one that helps Sauron create the rings. He also happens to see his family get killed. You see that? Parallels. The banter between these two reminded me of a buddy cop movie. You know, if both of those guys were brooding assholes.
And we do it again and again.
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will work your mouth like a puppet. You hear me?
Thankfully, there aren't much references to Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the appearance of Gollum in the game is not heavy-handed and doesn't feel shoehorned in. In fact, the whole story just kind of naturally flows, because everything feels like it fits in the canon. The characters and settings are taken right out of the movies and are very familiar. I think what really ties the game mechanics and the story together, though, is the amazing Nemesis system. So the Nemesis system is a big selling point of this game. Sauron's army is broken into captains and war chiefs, and although they're generated probably through some kind of weird algorithm, they have just enough personality and uniqueness that the fact that they are persistent in the world makes the system really, really interesting and makes it interesting to play with and encounters memorable. There were a ton of times I created a nemesis from a lowly orc peon just because his name was funny. Then I watched as my little peon rose through the ranks and manipulated the system so that he would eventually become a war chief, and I can control every orc under him. And just like every intricate sandcastle I spent hours and hours making at the beach, it always ended with their utter and total destruction. You know, once I was bored.
Stop me! No! Me only friend!
I'm not going to say this game looks horrible. It's a pretty good looking game considering that it's a huge open world that they have to show. But you can definitely see its shortcomings, as it is one of the last games to straddle that line between old gen and new gen hardware. It looks good, especially when you remember that this open world game, there's a ton of detail that needs to be created and the world building involved. Now, my friends can attest that I am a very, very cheap man. But I love this game so much that I actually put down money on the DLC, which adds new story missions for Talion and new weapons. The biggest part of the DLC, however, is the added storyline for Celebrimborn, which brings you a whole new set of powers and changes the gameplay and story enough that you feel like you're playing almost a whole new game. Yes, the story missions seem thin, but there is enough here in collectibles and lore to make up for it. I know I should judge this game on its own merits, but I think the DLC played a big part in my revisiting the game and enjoying it, and I would recommend the DLC if you get the game once the story is done, of course. The brawling mechanics are awesome, and the sense of growing powerful over the course of the game, and the Nemesis system make this a must-buy for any gamer that enjoys open-world games with a fantasy spin. I give Shadow of Mordor 8 Ghost Dads out of 10 on the PBG scoring scale.
I'll have your guts!
Where are the servants of the Dark Lord? Kill him!
We both want to kill each other, so one of us will be dead. And I think it will be me.